In Greek mythology, there's a story about a king and a sculptor named Pygmalion. This is about the 8th century before the Common Era. And Pygmalion once sculptured a beautiful lady out of ivory. And when he finished, she was so perfect and so beautiful that he prayed to his God, "God, I wish you could send me a wife as beautiful as her." He came home, he gave the statue a kiss, and sure enough, the statue came to life and became his wife. About 30 years ago, a psychologist, Robert Rosenthal, developed this story into what he called the Pygmalion effect. The Pygmalion effect describes how you think is how it will be, like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So for teachers or for parents, how you think about your children and your students and how you consider their potential, that's how they're going to end up being. Or for ourselves, how we think about ourselves in a more positive light with more potential or less potential will actually end up being that way. So the experiment that he made was a classroom in California at the beginning of the year. They gave all the students an IQ test. Now, they didn't give the results to the teachers, but they gave the teachers a list of names of students who they claimed had the most potential. At the end of the year, they took another IQ test of all the students. And sure enough, all the students had made improvements in their IQ test. But those students on that list made a vastly dramatic, greater improvement than the other students, because the teachers had obviously seen in them more potential, invested more in them, expected more of them, and brought them to greater heights. Now, I thought about this Pygmalion effect as we're approaching this Shabbat. It's the Shabbat called Shabbat Chazon, the Shabbat of vision. Always the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av, or this year on Tisha B'Av, is the Shabbat of vision. Why is it called that name? So the most basic explanation, perhaps the original explanation, is that Chazon is the first word of the Haftorah, of the section of the prophets that we're going to read tomorrow in the synagogue. And it describes Chazon Yeshayahu, the vision, the prophecy of the prophet Isaiah. And there, Isaiah, also around the 8th century before the Common Era, talks about how badly the Jewish people had behaved, how they betrayed God, how the city of the faithful now became the city of the unfaithful, of the murderers. He describes how even an animal is aware of their master and how to obey them, but you, the Jewish people, completely disregarded and rebelled against God. And all of this behavior led to the destruction of the temple of ancient Israel and to the death, persecution, and exile of so many Jewish people. So we read this Haftorah before Shabbat, Chazon, the vision, the prophecy of Yeshayahu, to remind us about what led to the destruction of our temples in ancient Israel. Very interestingly, a little more than 200 years ago, the great Tzaddik Rebbe Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, the Berditchever Rebbe, provided a very different explanation behind Chazon, this vision of this Shabbat. He said that this Shabbat, everyone, all of us, receive a vision of a better world, a redeemed world, a vision of the third and final temple. And he gave a metaphor. He said, imagine parents who buy a new suit for their young child, and the child, being a child, gets it all dirty, he plays around, he tears the suit. So the parents buy a second suit for their child. Again, the child, being a child, ruins the second suit. So this time, the parents buy a third suit for the child, but they don't give it to the child. Instead, they tell the child that when you're ready to grow up and behave appropriately in that suit, we'll give it to you. And once in a while, they show the suit to the child just to remind him, as an incentive, when you're ready, when you're grown up and matured, then we'll give you the suit. So too, says the Berditchever Rebbe, God gave us the first temple, but the Jews misbehaved and it got destroyed. And then the second temple, the same thing happened. So this time God says, I'm ready to give you a third temple, but I'm not giving it to you yet until you're ready for it. Once a year, on this Shabbat before or on Tisha B'Av, we get a vision. God shows us this third temple, shows us of Yerushalayim Habnuya, a rebuilt Jerusalem, and says, when you are ready, this is what I have in store for you. Now, why did the Berditchever Tzaddik give such a different explanation than the prophet Isaiah? Isaiah says that the vision is about how badly we behaved and how poorly, how we stooped so low. And according to the Berditchever Rebbe, the vision is about how great we can become. So perhaps what the Berditchever Tzaddik saw was that it's already been 1800 years in exile since the destruction of the Second Temple. And every year we're thinking about the vision of Yeshayahu, and it still didn't work. It wasn't so effective. Just reminding us of how poorly we can behave and how we can fall so low into depraved behavior against God and against each other is important. Of course, it's the prophecy of Yeshayahu, it's the word of God, but maybe not the most effective. And if we switched around and we were told how great you can become, how your potential is indeed you as a people, as humans, you can become a nation of people filled with kindness and with mercy and with empathy and with faith. You can in fact bring about a better world, a more peaceful world, a redeemed world. Maybe that'll work a little better. Maybe according to the Pygmalion effect, that will help us achieve our full potential. So as we go into this Shabbat Chazon, a very special Shabbat, let's consider both of these visions. Of course, the vision of Isaiah. Let's not be blind to our history, to our past, to our wrongdoings. Recognize that we suffered a lot, and according to our sages, a lot of it is because of our own poor behavior. Yes, we are capable of stooping very low to bestial animal levels. We've been there. But let's also be reminded of the vision as the Berditchever Tzaddik describes. We could be very great. We could be much better than we are. We have the potential, the ability to live a higher life, a more purposeful life with faith and kindness, compassion and peace to each other. May these visions be a true reminder for us all and help us be our best for ourselves and each other and bring about indeed the coming of Mashiach, the rebuilding of the third and final temple, and the ultimate and final redemption, b'mheira v'yameinu, speedily in our day.